In this video, I'll be sharing my top tips for how to ace your medical school interview in the UK. My name is Dr. Joshua Newington. I'm an admissions consultant here with the Profs, and with working with many students over the past few years, I've seen a lot of mistakes and a lot of really great things students do. And today I'll be summarizing some of the biggest takeaway lessons I've learned by supporting future medical students. So the medicine interview is the final and often most intimidating phase of applying to medical school. Congratulations if you've made it this far. And my biggest piece of advice would be to start preparing earlier than you think. By the time you've been invited to a medicine interview, there will possibly be only a few weeks until that date. And so to thoroughly prepare for your medicine interview, you should be preparing before you've even been invited. Ideally, I would recommend thinking about it for a while in advance, but really, as soon as you finish your UCAT exam, you should be in interview mode. My second piece of advice would be to really deeply research the medical school you're applying to. There's a lot of great tailored resources online from the medical schools and from people who've recently interviewed there, explaining what it is they're looking for and the format of the interview, which can vary greatly between medical schools. I had a recent student who was informed by the university which doctors would be interviewing her, and she looked them up and found what it is they specialized in and realized that it aligned with some of her interests. And by leaning into that and making the most of the opportunity to talk about shared interests, she forged a really strong and memorable connection with those interviewers. When it comes to mock interviews and practicing, it's absolutely so useful to get a friend or family to sit down and do mock interviews with you so that when you get there on the day, it feels natural, you've had feedback. And one piece of advice I like to give is to record those interviews so you can listen back and hear how you sound and tweak and change the way you're saying things, which may take practice. But at the same time, you can hurt yourself by over-preparing and sounding robotic and rehearsed on the day. As useful as preparation is, you don't want to sound inauthentic and insincere in the interview, so don't let preparation make you come across as over-prepared. There are many things you can be asked about in a medicine interview, but you should expect to be asked about why do you want to study medicine, why are you suitable for medicine, and why this medical school in particular. And you should have strong, really, nailed answers for these questions because they are what an interview is all about. And when you're asked a seemingly unrelated question, don't forget that fundamentally, that's what they're looking for. So for example, if they ask you about a time that you demonstrated teamwork and you want to talk about your experience on the school football team, that's great, but make sure you link it back to what's really important, which is how that experience makes you a better candidate for this position. That linking back is going to make a big difference between a good and a great answer to interview questions. With that all-important question of why medicine, a good answer to that question combines an interest in science and an interest in helping people. But the truth is everyone is going to say something to that effect. How do you stand out from that crowd? You stand out with a memorable and compelling personal anecdote that's unique to you. Really reflect on when it was you first had an interest in medicine, what particular stories you can tell that sparked that interest, and how have you developed that interest ever since then. That will help you stand out from the crowd when answering one of the most important questions in the whole interview. I'm sure by now, by the time you get to the interview, you'll have done a lot of work experience and volunteering, and you should commend yourself for having put in that hard work, both on the wards and wherever it is you've had exposure. But the real value of work experience is how you can reflect on it, what insights and lessons you can draw from that experience, how it changed your mind, and how it influenced your thinking and increased your resolve to study medicine. I've worked with students who have worked really hard, sometimes in excess of a year of work experience and volunteering, for the sake of their application, but they're not able to get the most out of that experience in mock interviews because they're not drawing insights on what they've seen. They're not reflecting on the lessons, the values, and the meaning of the moments they saw. So even if you've done only a small bit of work experience, reflect on what the most impactful things you saw were. What did you see that told you about what it means to be a good doctor when you've seen NHS values in practice? How did that make you realize those qualities are important to a doctor? How did it make you realize this is what you want to spend the rest of your life doing? That kind of reflection is more important than the actual work experience itself. I think one of the best ways to demonstrate a sincere interest in medicine and a connection to the field is to be reading the news, being aware of what current topics are being discussed with the NHS and how it's run. Medicine in the UK is a constantly evolving experiment, and medical schools really like candidates who show that they are part of that discussion. Being aware of what the hot topics are of the day, depending on whenever you're watching this video, and reading widely, reading articles, reading books. It's very hard to say how and when that will be useful, but in my experience, it will. They could ask you, tell me something you've read recently that really excited you, and have some things in your pocket, have some things ready to demonstrate that passion and interest that you know you have. Another really common station or question within a medicine interview involves ethics and situational judgment. What are your ethical views on a certain topic? What's the best way to behave in a certain tricky situation? Or perhaps you're watching a video of a doctor-patient consultation and you're asked to speak to how you feel it went. There are many common scenarios that I think you can prepare well for. Very important ethical dilemmas that knowing a bit about will serve you well. But the best advice I can give in this area is it's better to study the ethical frameworks, pillars, and decision-making tools that doctors use to face unexpected ethical situations. And that way, if you're given a situation you're not familiar with, you're asked to speak on a topic you don't know much about, at the very least you have the tools, the framework, the language, and the keywords to approach it in a structured and meaningful and coherent way. And a cheeky tip is to buy yourself time in that situation. You can start by explaining why you think a question is relevant, interesting, and complicated. That shows your appreciation of the nuance of a topic while giving you some thinking time to think of ethical pros and cons. Definitely do list pros and cons on a topic, but don't forget to finish with your own conclusion at the end, if that's what they're asking of you. Please bear in mind that a lot of this advice is different for Oxford and Cambridge, which are, unlike other medical schools, far more interested in your scientific thinking and your interest in the particularly academic curricula that they offer. If you have an Oxford or Cambridge interview coming up, then you will want to put much more time and energy dedicated to making sure your chemistry, biology, and maths are up to scratch, and preparing for the kind of lateral problem-solving questions that they put much more weight on. And we'll have a link on the screen to some Oxbridge specific resources for their interviews. If you found the advice in this video to be helpful, please like it and share it with your friends. And if you have any comments or questions about how to ace your medicine interview, pop them in the comment section below and we'll respond to them. Use the information on the screen now to get in contact with our team to arrange some one-to-one support. Best of luck with your studies and with your upcoming interviews.